in InDesign, and I'm going to open up a new document. So it's File, New, Document, and I have my basic setup here. 8.5 by 11 is the size of my document. It is in inches. The orientation, facing pages. In facing pages, we're going to turn off because that's meant for when you're designing a book. So we're only doing one page right now, so I'm going to turn that off. You can put as many pages as you like in here. So if you're doing multiple pages, you can put them all in at once, or you can add them as you want to once you have InDesign open. Start at page 1. Columns. This stuff is sort of to set up your text already, but I like to do that once we're in the document. We go down to margins, and like I mentioned before, I don't like having the margins within the document because they're pretty useless. They don't really serve a purpose. As far as I'm concerned, and I would like to put in my own guides, plus having the margins on, and then if I have my own guides, it looks very messy on the page and it's very distracting. So I'm going to zero these out, and because I have this link button turned on, once I click into the next box, everything is going to pop to that 0, 0, 0, 0 all around on the page. Next is the bleed and slug, and I am going to put in my bleed, which is the area that extends beyond the trim of the page on all 4 sides. Bleed is typically 0.125 inches all around, and again, I have my link box turned on, so once I click into the next box, everything is loaded into the boxes. I'm going to leave the slug alone, and remember the slug is for that information. You can put the slug at any size you want on any side or all 4 sides of the document, and that's mainly for putting little information into a text box within the slug for the printer to read. So if you're sending stuff to an actual printer that's going to open up your file and print it for you instead of going to like Kinko's or Staples or doing it at your own home printer, this is where you might put in a certain amount of information in a text box just so that the printer can read it before it goes on press. Now we're going to hit create. And here we are. You can see the tools are very similar, and once I click on a different tool, so I click on the text tool and I have all my text options coming up into the control panel at the top. The toolbar is always on the left. And then on the right, you have your different palettes, and the default one, the layers palette, comes up automatically. So I'm going to go back to my selection tool. And notice here, we have the white area, the gray area, and the little red hairline that's within the gray area. That's the bleed measurement. The white against the gray, right where it meets, that's called your trim line. So that's where your work can go up to. You will, if you have color or a photograph that's going to go across your entire page, you want to extend that color or photograph into the bleed, because once a printer gets a hold of this, and say you're printing a number of copies, 100, 1,000, 100,000, once they're finished printing and the page sits in what's called the jogger, then that goes on to, it jogs all the pages into one, sort of set space so that they're all at the same orientation. Then that goes to the cutter, and it's a big mechanical cutter. And if you have a number of pages on top of each other, the cutter, the blade, pushes down on the edge of the trim line. And once it pushes down on all those other pages, and it pushes the pages out a tiny bit. So if you don't have your color extended into the bleeding off of the trim, then you're bound to have white space on your finished product. So you would say, I'm just going to make a text box here. A color box. And I'm going to start clicking and dragging over from one side to the other, and I'm just going to fill it. I go to my swatches palette and I'm going to fill it. So you can see that the color extends beyond the trim line to the bleed.